I'm Liz Hanson, and today we're going to be talking about growing. We're going to be talking about pest management, and we're going to be talking about harvesting that nice bumper crop at the end. So the first part we talk about was we're going to talk about growing your plants. So you've chosen your seedlings, you've planted them up, and now we're going to talk about what we call the maintenance phase. So keeping your plants growing nice and happy and healthy. Remember that plants are actually very productive, so they have a very high food requirement, food and mineral requirement. So we've got to keep them growing nice and healthy. And for that, I've come up with 5 key points. So the 5 key points to getting your plants to grow nice and fast and healthy, I've come down to the 3 M's and the 2 W's. The 3 M's are minerals, mulches and manures, and then watering and weeding. 3 M's, 2 W's. So the first of the 5 maintenance phases is the first 2, really important, your minerals and manures. Now your minerals and your manures are your building blocks for your plant. The minerals are basically the structure of the plant, and the manures feed it. The manures also provide minerals as well, but it's like the food and the building blocks, so it's really important we get that right. And you can either give them a McDonald's diet, or you can go ahead and give them really all the healthy things and like a nice organic diet. I make liquid manures out of comfrey and kelp. And so I make up a solution, and I continue to feed the plants with that solution, and it keeps them growing nice and fast and healthy. The manures, I have my own chickens and cows here. I'm really lucky. But, you know, accessing manures from outside, I realise that a lot of people have to do that. But just remember that it's healthy animal, healthy manures. So the less healthy the animal, the less healthy the manures. So you get the best you can get. And the third one is mulches. Really, really important in this climate is to get a nice heavy layer of mulch on your soil. I'm quite a lazy gardener, and I incorporate my manures as part of the mulch. I make sure the mulch is on the top, but the manures are in there. My vegetable gardening is like a living worm farm, so I have a really active soil life in there. I say ecosystem. They're really quite a healthy ecosystem, and just like there's an ecosystem above the ground, there's an ecosystem below the ground. So the mulches actually create almost like a living forest in your soil. Must have mulches in this climate. Very hot and desiccating is that sun, and without them your plants will suffer. So we have an accelerator in the form of 3 things that our plants need. They need water, they need food, and they need sunlight. In winter, when the sunlight is reduced, of course the accelerator's off. Your foot's off the pedal, and we need less of the other 2. So watering once a week you get away with. But in summer, when the accelerator's flat to the floorboards, we need to up the water and we need to increase the food. We've had the 3 M's. The first of the W's is watering. Most important as part of food production is they require quite a bit of water. More so in summer than in winter. Our summers are quite hard here, and we've just had a run of hot weather as it is, and we have to keep the water up because we talk about the different accelerators. We have increased the sunlight, we've increased the temperature, so therefore we've got to increase the food, increase the mulch, and increase the water. And if we don't increase that water accordingly, of course the plants aren't going to survive. Just like us, we drink more on a hot day than we do on a cold day, as does the plant. So we have to actually increase that water in summer if we want healthy, productive plants. So getting water onto your plants, it's about timing, so getting the timing right, and there's enough information out there to say that, you know, we water after the sun goes down. So you can either choose late in the afternoon or you choose early in the morning. I prefer early in the morning because it keeps the water off the plants overnight and just sort of discourages fungal problems. The types of watering systems, so we have just had a watering system installed here, which is great. It comes on for us. You can have the micro sprayers the same, the good old-fashioned sprinkler, or take your sprinkler off and handheld hoses for those of you that are on water restrictions. All of them deliver water, and of course you have to make sure that your plants are watered enough, and the only way to discover that is to go into your garden and make sure that your soil is nice and wet underneath your mulch. Your mulch is not the fault if the ground is dry underneath. It's about the deliverance of the right amount of water. And the last W is weeding. And of course weeds are just plants out of place, and we want the plant there, it's not a weed. If we don't want the plant there, it's a weed. I've got here some grass that I've just pulled out of my pathways. I don't want grass in my vegetable garden, but I do want grass in my cow paddock. So here it's a weed and out there it's a want. So weeds are just plants out of place. If we leave a space in our garden and then nature will come and try and fill it, and it'll fill it with something maybe we don't want. So first of all is you try to work your way out of weeds, and that's part of good design, which is part of permaculture. If we have to keep weeding an area, then we've got to ask ourselves why. First of all, mulches. That's why one of the good reasons that we use mulches in our garden is it's a good form of weed control. But also in our pathways, we try to come up with something like living pathways, because if you fill the space, nature can't put any more in it, and then you select the plant, and so then it is not a weed. Instead of hating weeds, we can use them as a resource. You can use them as mulch on your garden, you can use them in liquid manures, or you can put them in your compost. So pest management. A lot of people become obsessed with pest management because it's the way we're taught to think. We get a plant where its health isn't good, it's stressed, we're not feeding it or watering it properly, and then in comes the pest. Instead of us going, oh, the plant's not happy, and how do we address the happiness of the plant, we go, we have to deal with the pest management. Well, I'm about making the plant happy again, so increasing the water, increasing the food, and making the plant happy, and so it will become pest resistant for itself. However, there are two types of pests, and I've broken it up in my mind to the micro pests and the macro pests. Some of the micro pests include cabbage moth, for instance, 20-spot lady beetle. There's a number of them out there, and I don't even obsess about knowing about them all. I just know that if my plants are healthy, then I don't have a problem with the micro pests. The macro pests are the large things, like the parrots, the bandicoots, the wallabies, the kangaroos, the scrub turkeys. I even include fruit fly in that. And with those, then exclusion is the key. So keeping them out of your system. So bagging your bananas, putting up a decent fence around your vegetable garden to keep the wallabies and bandicoots and kangaroos from jumping in and helping themselves. Scrub turkeys, big problem here on the Sunshine Coast. I find that if I make outside as interesting as inside my vegetable garden, then they leave my vegetable garden alone. They mostly walk around, they come up against the fence and they deflect. But if you don't have that fence there, then you're a little bit in trouble. To beat back part of your pest management system is to invite wildlife into you, and selective wildlife. Like in my vegetable garden, I want some of the insect-eating birds and bats, but I don't necessarily want the fruit-eating birds and bats. Part of the habitat that I provide for pest control for the things that I do want to encourage are things like frogs and lizards, nectar-eating birds. So I put grevilleas in, for instance, for my nectar-eating birds, because most nectar-eating birds, 70% of their diet is insects. And every time that I feed them in my garden, they're going to go around and they're going to do some insect control for me. Ponds and bird baths, providing bird baths, and all those nectar-feeding birds love a bird bath, and they come every day. So diversity in my garden is the key for me. So I have a lot of herbs and vegetables and flowering plants, and that's not only healthy for me to be able to have a diverse range of food in my diet, but it's also good for my garden. Okay, we've come to harvesting. That's the fun bit. That's the part we all like the most, bringing in that fresh produce into the house. And there's nothing more satisfying when you have that first meal where everything is provided from the garden. It's pride, it's feeling really successful, it's security in food. So most of us need to change our eating habits to good, and having your garden makes you change your eating habits, because we eat seasonal, which is really important, something we all used to do, and now it's all this whole global world where we have food come in from all over the place. So not only is there transportation, but we're actually eating things we shouldn't need to be eating outside of the season. Also, we need to turn our attention away from supermarket reliance. We all have this whole mindset about food comes from supermarkets. The healthy food people. Well, I want you to become the new healthy food people and start looking at your garden to provide your needs. And the harvest part is the fun part. You've got to rethink and see your garden as your supermarket. Even get yourself a shopping basket, head out to your garden and see it as the new supermarket. So now we're going to talk about continuous planting and continuous harvesting. And really important is continuous planting. It's no good having 15 lettuces out there and going, oh my goodness, I can't think about planting another lettuce, because eventually those lettuces will finish and then you will have no lettuces. So we've got to, as we do have continuous planting, we've got to think about continuous harvesting. So we're used to that supermarket where we go and buy a whole lettuce. But in fact, if we grow a lettuce in our garden, we can continuously pick them. And instead of getting one lettuce out of a lettuce, we can get 20 lettuces out of one lettuce. And we can do that with a number of plants. The celery, the same, we just keep taking the outside leaves. Broccoli, once we've got the head, we leave them and we get all the sprouts from the outside, and that can go on for months and months. As does tomatoes, they can continue to reshoot and refruit, and there's a whole heap of plants that you just get continuous harvest. Of course, there's the mainstay ones that continue to fruit through a whole season, like cucumbers and eggplants and capsicums, and you continue to plant. So you do a one-off plant and you continue to get things, so we have our garden like a supermarket. So if you eat it, I want you to try and grow it, and you have to see it as a challenge. I want you to have success, start small, succeed, and then expand. So in summary, we keep our plants growing well by remembering those 5 key points, the 3 M's and 2 W's. And pest management will look after itself. And in the end, we'll have a nice bumper crop to take to our table.